Welcome to Lessons That Last, where a researcher and a teacher talk about what it means to make a lasting impact on students' lives. They unpack the stories former students shared about their memorable teachers and discuss how we can all make a greater impact on the people in our lives. Here's Julie and Laura.
Hello, and welcome back to the Lessons That Last podcast. I'm Julie Hassan, researcher, professor, and big fan of educators everywhere, especially my lovely co-host,
Laura Estes Swilley, an educator from everywhere.
I keep in my head now, all of a sudden, it's that song, I've Been Everywhere, and I feel like we have lately.
Yes.
So we are heading into the dip. The honeymoon is over.
It is over.
By the time our listeners hear this episode, will be almost October, which we know is a tough time for teachers. So
we know
how are
it.
you feeling?
I think we know it, Julie, but we forget. Do you remember, not realizing that this happened every year? I was just talking to a friend who is one of the best teachers on our campus, and she was telling me, well, my students hate me. And I said, no, they don't hate you. She said, no, really, they hate me. And I said, I just want to remind you that we have this conversation every year at this time. Coming up to
October,
right?
Yep.
Coming up to the first conference night. They're in shock that you are expecting things of them, and they don't hate you. They are struggling. And as I was saying that to her, I was thinking, oh, I needed to hear this because I'm not sure I have connected with my students at all in some ways. And I reflected, okay, I always feel this way. This is what late September and early October feel like. Did you have that in elementary?
Yeah. And it's funny because for those of us who are experienced teachers, we know what those great relationships feel like at the end of the year.
Right.
So we feel the difference. I'm not sure as a beginning teacher or even early years, I noticed it as much, but we know that it's not where we want it to be because we know what it's going to feel like at the end.
Exactly. And I wonder, thinking about you, not just as a teacher, but as an administrator and then also as a principal, both levels of administration, did it feel that way with your whole school culture as well?
I didn't notice it with kids as much. It's not like referrals to the office went way up in October or, kids were any squirrelier, but teachers struggled. We for sure knew. And so we tried to plan things in October that didn't require so much work outside of the classroom. And we tried to do things to remind them that connection will come and that we do feel this way every year. And that, we say the honeymoon is over, and I do think that's a good analogy because when we first get our new group of kids, we're excited, we have plans, we're getting to know each other, and then they start to test, and then we start to assign heavier work, and everybody gets a little weird.
I know. It's hard when your teacher asks you to think and show evidence of thinking. What?
Why are you so mean?
It's awful. I'm a terrible, terrible person.
Well, I will say, as a professor of all graduate students, this is about the time the first paper is due.
Right.
And they feel exactly the same way.
Right. And they're working with students who feel the same way. It's interesting how we all have the same patterns. And I was thinking too, the idea of the honeymoon is over, just like in a new marriage, a new relationship, where the little things start to get to you.
Yeah.
Early on in the year, when someone doesn't know where to turn in their paper, where there's one place, there's only ever been one place. Yeah. It's right there. It's a standalone table with a giant basket. It's right there.
And probably a sign.
It doesn't make you angry at the beginning. It doesn't make you angry in week 2 or 3, but you get to a point where you're like, are you kidding? Seriously. And that is October, isn't it?
Right, right. So
Yeah.
probably first couple months of a new marriage or relationship, when the Argyle sock is outside of the laundry basket.
Right.
Oh, look at that precious sock.
Oh, he missed the basket.
A couple months in, that sock will make you crazy.
Correct. I'm thinking that Jason Swilly married me and thought it was cute at first that my hair was everywhere. And now when he opens the refrigerator and my hair is there, because it's everywhere, literally in the refrigerator, the dishwasher, you name it, there's my hair. He's probably like, oh, this is so gross. And I'm like, oh, well, you probably used to think that was cute.
Yeah. And then, we get further in and we love those familiar things, just
and
like
focus on what's
kids.
important, because the little things don't matter. Yeah. So I think this is a hard time of the year. I feel it. And that's one of the reasons I picked this story for today. I was looking for something that would nurture me, thinking I'm just like everyone else. We all need a little something right now, because this is the hard time. There are other hard times in the year, obviously, we know that.
January.
But yes.
Well,
but
maybe we'll pull this one back out in January.
Heading into testing season.
Right.
But this is the first slump of the year.
Yep. It's
with
the dip.
Yep. It's the first dip with the new kids and the new teacher to them. And we're all doing something new. So I was looking for a little something, thinking everyone's probably looking for something right now.
Yeah. And as we prepared to talk about this story, was thinking about our teachers, like some of our favorite teachers. And as a student, if they dipped in October, and I'm certain they did, I was oblivious to it.
Yep.
Did you notice our beloved Judy Bryant?
No, I don't think Judy Bryant ever publicly dipped. I'm sure she privately dipped. No.
Which is good to know, right? Because our kids don't know, because we go in and put on our teacher face and all the enthusiasm, and we teach away, and we tell them, you can do this first paper. You can do the brainstorming.
Don't start with the brainstorming. Like, that is killing my kids right now. But yeah, Judy Bryant, Mr. Essanidi, Mrs. Barentine, Miss Ignatic. I never saw a sign of dip, and that is very comforting, because I think that I am just as professional as they are or were. I'm not sure that I'm as great as they were, but I'm definitely as professional. So I'm putting on my face every day, and it's good to know that the kids aren't feeling it like I am. Yeah. Good reminder.
And we're so super hard on ourselves.
Yes.
Like we have these expectations of ourselves. And because in October we don't already feel those relationships that we know are going to happen by the end of the year, we feel like we're doing something wrong.
Right.
And not that we're just Octobering.
Right. It's not enough. I haven't done enough. What else can I do? And I think for a lot of us, it's stay the course. Keep doing what you're doing, because you're doing something right. You're doing something great. If you care about the culture in your classroom and you're trying to build, then you're on the right track. My second period, I have to tell you, I have maybe 6 varsity baseball players. And that's a lot. That's a lot. But they have this thing together where they talk about family. No, that's not family behavior. Or, hey, that's family. What are you doing? He's family. She's family. And they brought that into my classroom.
It's where, like Lilo and Stitch.
Yes. They call each other out on, what are you doing? that's family. This is our family. We're a family. What are you doing? And it's constant because I see it in their relationships that that's what they do, but they've also created that in the classroom. And I have this feeling in that class that I want to have in my other classes, but the other classes aren't family yet.
Because those 6 have been playing ball together.
Exactly.
For years. Yeah.
Exactly. And those 6 who've been playing ball together for years are leaders, and they're not an enclave, right? They're bringing other people into family. They are appreciating other people. For example, one of my former students actually started teaching across the hall from me 2 weeks ago. And the baseball players were like, who's that? And I told them, and they said, well, we got to meet him. He's family. And I said, well, go at the end, when the bell rings, go on over and meet him. And they did. And they were like, you're family now. And I said, guys, he was family before you were, but that's okay.
Right.
You know, like he was family 10 years ago. So that's the vibe we want. It just takes time to build.
Yeah. Yeah. Time and intention.
Yes. A focus.
And I love that they are very intentional about creating that family. Go baseball players.
I know. It's great. We got a brand new administrator who walked in my room, and we were sort of chatting afterward, and he said, wow, you got like the whole baseball team in there. And I said, oh, I know. And he said, well, you know, Miss Estes, you got to watch out for baseball players. And I said, I've been watching out for baseball players since I was 13.
I was going to say, there was a time when if you had known, you would be spending your days with 6 baseball players.
I have been keeping my eye on baseball players since I was 13. I've got this. We're going to be okay.
Oh, same, friend. Same.
Oh, I know. We were doing it together. Yesterday, we drove past the North Brandon baseball field, and Jason was looking at the houses. There are houses right across the street. It's a huge baseball field. They have like 4 fields. The parking lot is packed. There's all kinds of stuff going on. And he said, wow, I would hate to live across the street from this. And I said, not if you were a teenage girl.
I know.
I was thinking about
us. It took us a bit to get there. We would have gladly
walk right across the street. No problem.
Funny. So I've been thinking about this story and thinking about teachers who stay connected to their students. Speaking of baseball players, there was a certain Coach Skull who was our driver's ed coach.
He was, yes.
Who ended up coaching my Connor when he was little at baseball camp.
Yes.
And I would run into him because my kiddo played baseball. And so that was always fun. And he would remember you trying to parallel park. I have this memory of him just leaning out of the tower, yelling,
screaming, screaming out the tower. Yes.
And yet we, by the time we survived driver's ed, we loved him, and he clearly loved us because so happy when we became parents and teachers, like every time he saw us.
I remember Connor going to camp one day, and we were both in the stands together saying, oh, you taught them how to drive. Those two.
He does not take credit for that, but anything successful that we've done, it clearly was the coaching of Coach Skull. So who else do you stay connected with, like in terms of our former teachers?
It's really awesome to sort of stay in the community when the teachers stay in the community, right? I have one of the great things when I started teaching, there were other teachers on campus who had been my teacher. And so I felt nurtured and cared for. Martha Bennett, who was our PE coach at our middle school, was the department head at my school. And we were coming up on the first pep rally, and she came to me and brought me a shirt. And she said, you're going to want this for tomorrow. She was taking care of me still.
She was bringing you PE uniform.
Yeah, it was a PE shirt, but it was like the right logo and the colors.
Oh.
And I didn't necessarily have it. And she made sure I had it. My economics
And she
teacher.
said, you can go in the locker room and put that on.
Yes. My economics teacher was on campus. My English teacher, we talked about The Outsiders. Mrs. Huff, who taught me The Outsiders, was my peer in the English department.
Sweet.
So it was really great to have those connections, especially as a new teacher. And I keep in touch with a lot of our teachers via social media, and I'm sure you do too.
Yeah. And it does tend to be more of our high school teachers. And I think maybe just the recency or the fact that we have access to maybe social media or other ways of connecting when we're a little older. But there's still some elementary, certainly Nancy Russell. If you look at any of my work, there's Nancy Russell, and we're connected on social media. And, we spent some time together as professionals.
Right. And that's amazing. That's amazing.
And sometimes for us, we grew up in a community where some of our teachers had kids our age. So Mrs. Miller, I was connected to her through her daughters. She passed not too long ago, but is still connected with her girls. So you're right there. If you stay in the community or stay connected. So how do you stay connected with your students once they leave you?
I stay very connected to my students. There was a year, I've always said, it's kind of a rule, I think, but also it's just the right thing. I don't accept social media requests for my current students. And I teach seniors. So one year we were at my stepdaughter's graduation. So her graduation was same day, same time as our graduation, and I couldn't be there. So we're sitting at the graduation and I start getting these messages. And Jason was like, what is going on? I said, the kids are friend requesting me. They were in the middle of graduation saying, I walked friend request. So I have hundreds and hundreds of friends on social media who are former students. So I know what they're doing. I can kind of touch in with them. I just got a message today from one of my students, Helda, who said, hey, I'm applying for a scholarship. I need a recommendation. And she graduated, I think it was 2019. So she was reaching back. It's great. Like, honestly, there's so many things wrong with social media, obviously, but I love it. I love it because I can keep up with my students. I can see them grow. I can watch their families grow, and it's just beautiful. And we can stay a little bit connected or a lot connected, depending on what they want.
Yeah. Oh, and it's so nice to celebrate their successes.
Yes.
Like even my former second graders now, one just got a doctorate. She's a doctor of PhD in psychology.
Wow.
And, they're getting married and they're having their own kids. And it's sweet to see them grow up and do big things.
I just had a conversation with a girl she's a woman who was in my class and married a boy in my class. And she said, next year, our daughter will be with you. She will be at your school. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I said, great. She will not be in my class. She'll be a freshman, but bring her to my room. Everybody needs a touchstone. And when I was thinking about our teachers, you don't necessarily think about your mom as a teacher, but I do. And I think about her a lot when I have friends' kids who are on campus. And I always say, I'm right here. You come here. Do you need to store your PE clothes in my room? Yes. You have 2 backpacks. Stop carrying 2 backpacks. Drop one off in my room. That kind of thing, because your mom was always there for me in a way where she was my teacher. I was in her classes, but also she was my best friend's mom, and she was like a mom away from home. And what a bonus. It was amazing. And I want to do that for kids too.
Yeah.
So now I'm getting ready to do it for kids of my former students.
Sweet.
Right?
Oh, I love that. And it's so tied to this sweet story that you picked for today. So this is Dean's story about Mrs. Nichols, who was his fourth grade teacher, but who remained like his teacher, and he remained one of her kids, which I love about teaching. Like,
I say it all the time. Once you're my kid, once you're my student, you are always my student.
Yeah.
And I will always look out for you. And I love this story for so many reasons. And it's fourth grade, which we've talked about in our previous podcast, such a bad year for me. I would have never stayed connected to that teacher. And this is so beautiful because I can put myself right in that age, right in that time, and see the relationship that was built here.
Yeah. Love it. So will you, Laura, share with us Dean's story about Mrs. Nichols?
Yes. Mrs. Nichols was my fourth grade teacher and undoubtedly my favorite. She was kind, and I learned so much in her class. She was a formative part of my development as a learner and a leader. When I graduated from high school and was preparing to leave for boot camp, I stopped by her classroom to visit her. Mrs. Nichols stayed in contact with my mom and sent me letters throughout boot camp and as I prepared to deploy. During my tour in Iraq, I got cards and letters from my former teacher and her fourth grade student. That mail lifted my spirit and kept me going. I feel so lucky to have had a teacher like Mrs. Nichols in my life. She made an impact on me as a fourth grader and again as a soldier. She's no longer with us, but I will never forget her.
Oh, Mrs. Nichols, writing letters. Can you imagine?
And getting her kids in to connect. Ugh.
You know why? Because we're family.
It's family. It's a family. You write to your family.
I'm gonna get all.
I know. I'm having the feelings. I have written so many letters to kids in boot camp. And I feel like it's an honor.
Because it's one thing when your parents write you an encouraging letter.
Yes.
But it's another, like when your teacher says they're proud of you. Like, yes. I don't care how old you are or how long you've been gone. Like, if there are certain people who, like, their pride means so much. You know, Mrs. Russell sends a sweet card, you know, and I know she will again when this book that we're writing comes out. You know, every time something happens, and it's just sweet. It really does mean so much.
Yeah. We're working in my classes on college essays because that's like time to write a personal essay. Let's do college essays. We can kill two birds with one stone. And one of the prompts is coming from the Common app in Florida, is about how a gesture that was loving and kind surprised you. You were not expecting it, and it brought joy to your life.
I love that prompt.
Oh, it's a great, right? And that's what this story is about, is being loved and cared for by someone who did love and care for you when you were a kid, but you're not expecting that to stay and stick. And when it does, oh my goodness.
And it's one of the things that we've heard in so many stories. People will say she didn't have to, or he didn't have to love me like that. It is a discretionary bit of investment, right? And when someone invests their discretionary time and energy into you, that makes you feel worthy and capable. And I'm sure he needed that at that time.
Yes. And all of those little touchstones back to those kids, how uplifting that was for him. I can't imagine how much that meant to him.
So sweet.
Yeah.
So sweet. And I'm thinking for us, when we were going through national board,
Yeah. Yes.
trying to put all that portfolio together, there was assistance offered by some mentor teachers in our district. And one of them was Judy Bryant, and the other one was Joan Barentine, who we've already talked about. We talked about so many times. But their encouragement during that challenging process,
Yes.
they were all like, you can do this. You've got
Or, oh my gosh, you are such a good teacher, right? Because we're sharing. I mean, that's what national boards is. You're sharing your teaching, and they're not only encouraging you, but like acknowledging you. That means a lot, especially for me. You were a little bit ahead of me time-wise. You had been teaching a little bit longer. But I was a fourth year teacher. And so still in that new phase where I wasn't sure if I was any good at what I was doing, and to have that affirmation from people who I had already sought to affirm me as a kid meant a lot. It meant a lot. And I think that's what we forget sometimes, when we're bogged down in the October, right? The October feeling is, it takes time to build real relationships. And then those real relationships can extend in any way you want them to, because you took the time to build them. They're not superficial, they're real.
Oh, yes. I mean, Judy Bryant is a thread for us, like, especially you teaching the same content all the way through. So when we wrote this book, Lessons That Last, it's coming out, and we got the most beautiful book blurbs from people we love. Probably the most important and beautiful came from Judy Bryant. So when your two students collaborate and write a book, and then you have the beauty and the grace to write a book blurb about that book. I mean, that to me is just, that'll be, anything else will be icing on a cake.
Yeah. And you can look at your students, and I can look at my students and know how she was feeling about what we were doing. You know, like I had a little tiny hand in that. And I'm so proud of this person you became.
Yeah. And who would have thunk?
Nobody would have thunk about me. Well, maybe she would, actually. She always believed in me.
She always did. She always did. And that did make a difference. It did matter. And, she always inspired all of her students, including us, to do creative things and to dream big. And
yeah.
Oh,
yeah. And so we can think back when we're hitting this October slump to sitting in those classrooms and never feeling like anything was out of sync, because it didn't feel that way. And we were building a community and building family, and we didn't even know it.
Yeah.
So it's the same for our kids.
It is. And the complaining about the hard is just what we do as humans. We like comfort. And when you make us uncomfortable, which is your job, as a teacher, if you're any good at it, we're gonna be pushed and challenged, and a little beyond what's comfortable.
Yes,
and we just have to remember that they will be grateful for that in the end.
In the end, yes, and we want them to look back on us as teachers who care for them, but also who expected good work, expected hard work, expected learning, expected some level of achievement from them. And I think that makes them respect us in the end, as well as some of them love us, some of them like us, some of them are indifferent to us, but respect us because we gave them what they deserved, what they were there for every single day.
And those high expectations communicate belief better than anything we could ever say, by pushing a little bit and supporting in that push. We're saying you are capable of doing this.
Right. Yeah. You can do it.
So you are capable of brainstorming.
It's a challenge. challenge for my kids right now.
Yeah, that's a challenge for all of us, right? It's not easy.
Brainstorming has never been a challenge for me.
No.
It's just taking everything here and putting it on paper.
But you are a different kind of thinker than
That's
most of the
true.
rest of us.
That's true.
Who
That
are
is
worried
true.
about if it's right or not.
Yeah. I mean,
censor.
and that's the problem. There you go. A brainstorm doesn't care if it's right or not. Brainstorm doesn't care that you're controlling what you're doing. It's just getting all the things out.
Goes against all of the testing
Yes.
and other things.
Exactly. Then you can weed out the junk. I mean, we all have junk, right?
We do.
So it's hard, and I understand why it's hard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I will continue to expect good, thoughtful, critical papers with APA citations and formatting. Because I mean like that too.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine any student, little to high school to grad student, who does not want, even though we complain, a little challenge, a little push, some high expectations for our work, for our behavior, for like just who we are as human beings. If we don't leave a classroom a little better human than when we entered that classroom, then that's not a teacher. Right. Yeah. It's not a teacher we're going to remember.
I agree. And I want to point out, I have heard from my students when they talk about teachers where they feel like they wasted their time in classes. And I don't really let them talk about teachers specifically because those are my peers. But as seniors, they're ultimate consumers. They've been through it. And there have been classes where they were just there. They've been in classes where they were pushed. And as much as no one wants to be pushed when you're 17, they know the value when they walk out of that class. So I know that fourth graders know, and I know that second graders know, and I know that grad students know. We want to learn. We don't want to waste our time.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We want our thinking pushed. We want to be challenged. We want to come out differently than when we entered.
Exactly.
And we want to come out feeling like we are happy to have accomplished, but sad to leave that family. And I keep seeing that on social media, that the hardest thing about teaching is you build that little family.
And then they leave.
And you have to let them go. And sometimes, like for your guys who are seniors, they're going not just to the next hallway,
right?
They're going far away, like
lots of directions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That we can be a Miss Nichols and find ways to keep encouraging and stay connected. And I'm so glad you picked this story today.
Me too.
I needed it.
I needed it. And so I know someone else needs it too.
Yeah. Well, friends, we hope this helps you with the dip. Keep going. You're not there yet. We've hit a little bump after the honeymoon phase, but we're going to get back up. And by the end of the year, you're going to have that little family, and you're going to be sorry to see them go. And they're definitely going to be sorry to say goodbye to you.
Yes. Yeah, they will.
So keep going, friends. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Lessons That Last podcast.
Have a great week, friends. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you will subscribe to the Lessons That Last podcast wherever you listen. Give us a rating too, which will help other listeners find us. And don't forget to visit chalkandchances.com for more stories. You can also find more information on Julie's research in books. While you're there, take the quiz to find out what kind of memorable teacher you are. I took it and was surprised by what I found. I think you'll find good food for thought. Let us know about your quiz results. We hope you will meet us here each week and bring a friend to share the conversation.